You know English. You understand almost everything. But when it's your turn to speak, you freeze. Your mind goes blank. Simple sentences feel hard. And in that moment, you feel something frustrating, like you're stuck inside your own head. You know the words, but you can't use them. Why? What's actually blocking you? Because it's not your vocabulary. It's not your grammar. It's something much deeper, something no one has ever explained to you. And once you see it, you'll understand exactly why you've been stuck and how to fix it, starting today. You trained your brain to think about English, not speak it from the very beginning. You were taught to slow down, to think first, to check every word, to make sure everything is correct. So English became something you build step by step, instead of something you say naturally. And now, when you try to speak, your brain doesn't move freely. It stops. It thinks. It tries to find the perfect sentence. It keeps asking, is this right? But speaking doesn't work like that. Speaking is fast. It's natural. It's not about thinking too much. It's about responding in the moment. Right now, your brain is still in study mode, not in speaking mode. That's why your thoughts feel slow and your words don't come out easily. And as long as your brain keeps thinking too much, your mouth will always be one step behind. You don't just want to speak. You want to speak perfectly. You want your sentence to sound right, clear, smooth, impressive. So before you say anything, your brain starts fixing everything. You change words, you adjust grammar, you repeat the sentence in your head again and again until it feels correct. And in that time, real life keeps moving. The conversation continues, the moment passes, and you stay silent. Not because you don't know what to say, but because you're trying to say it perfectly. This is the trap. Perfection feels safe, but it's actually slowing you down. Because perfection needs time. And speaking doesn't give you time. Real conversation is fast. People don't wait for perfect sentences. They respond, they react, they move forward, even with small mistakes. But you pause, you hold back, you try to fix everything before speaking, and that's exactly why nothing comes out. Fluent speakers don't do this. They don't stop to build the perfect sentence. They release simple words quickly. They make mistakes and keep going. They focus on connection, not perfection. And that's why they sound natural. Because fluency is not about speaking perfectly. It's about speaking freely. The moment you stop trying to be perfect, you give yourself permission to speak, and that's where real progress begins. So next time, don't wait for the perfect sentence. Say the simple one. Say it fast. Say it anyway. Because broken English spoken with confidence will always take you further than perfect English stuck in your mind. Before you say anything, your brain takes a long path. First, you think in your own language. Then, you try to find the same idea in English. Then, you fix the grammar. Then, you check if it sounds right. And only after all of that, you try to speak. This whole process feels normal. You've been doing it for so long. It feels like the only way. But this is exactly what's slowing you down. Because real speaking doesn't happen in steps. It happens in one moment. Fast, direct, without stopping. When you translate, you create a delay between your thought and your voice. Your idea is ready, but your words are late. And that gap is where hesitation begins. That's why you feel stuck. That's why your sentences break. That's why you lose confidence mid-sentence. Because your brain is doing too much work before you even open your mouth. Fluent speakers don't translate. They don't build sentences from another language. They think directly in English, even if it's simple, even if it's not perfect. It comes naturally because there is no extra step in between. Right now, translation is acting like a wall. Your thoughts are on one side and your words are on the other. And every time you try to speak, you have to climb that wall. That's why it feels hard. That's why it feels slow. That's why it feels tiring. But the moment you stop translating, everything starts to change. Your thoughts become faster. Your response becomes quicker. Your speech becomes smoother. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Your brain will resist because it's used to the old way. But this discomfort is a sign that you're growing. So instead of thinking in your language, start forming simple thoughts directly in English. even if they're small, even if they feel incomplete. Because fluency is not built by translating perfectly, it's built by thinking directly. And the moment your brain stops translating and your voice finally starts flowing, there is something inside you, very quiet, but very powerful, a small fear, not loud, not obvious, but always there. What if I say it wrong? What if they laugh? What if I sound stupid? So before you speak, you stop yourself, you change your words, you shorten your sentence, or sometimes you say nothing at all, and on the outside, it looks like you're just quiet, but inside, your mind is full of thoughts you never said. This is what fear does. It doesn't just make you nervous, it blocks your voice completely. Because your focus is not on speaking anymore, it's on avoiding mistakes. And when your goal becomes don't be wrong, you stop taking action, you play safe, you stay silent. You wait for the perfect moment, when you feel ready, when you feel sure. But that moment never comes, because confidence doesn't come from thinking, it comes from doing. Every fluent speaker you see today has made thousands of mistakes. Wrong grammar, wrong words, broken sentences, but they kept speaking. They didn't let mistakes stop them. They used mistakes to grow. But you treat mistakes like failure. You think one wrong sentence means you're not good enough, so you hold back again and again, and slowly, silence becomes your habit. But listen carefully. Mistakes are not the enemy. Silence is, because every mistake you make while speaking teaches your brain something new. But every time you stay silent, your brain learns nothing. This is the truth most people avoid. You cannot become fluent while trying to avoid mistakes. It's impossible. Fluency is built on imperfect action, on trying, on speaking even when you're unsure. So the real shift is this. Stop trying to be right. Start allowing yourself to be wrong. Say the sentence, even if it's broken, even if it's not perfect, even if you feel nervous because your voice will never grow if you keep hiding it. And the moment you stop fearing mistakes, your real voice finally starts to come out. Not perfect, but real. And that is where fluency begins. Every day, you are around English, you watch videos, you listen to conversations, you read sentences, you understand more than before. And slowly, you start feeling like you're improving. It feels good. It feels like progress. But then, someone asks you a simple question. And suddenly, you can't answer. Your mind goes quiet. Your words don't come, and you wonder, why is this happening and when I understand so much? Because understanding is not the same as speaking. Listening is passive, reading is passive, watching is passive, but speaking is active. It requires you to take what's inside your mind and push it out. And if you never train that part, it stays weak. Right now, you are feeding your brain English every day, but you're not training it to respond. It's like filling a bottle with water, but never opening it. Everything stays inside, nothing flows out. That's why your mind feels full, but your mouth feels empty, because you've built knowledge, but not expression. Fluent speakers don't just consume English, they release it. They speak, they repeat, they try. They struggle. They say things wrong, and then say them better the next time. They don't wait until they know enough. They use what they already know, even if it's small, even if it's simple, even if it feels incomplete, and that's what builds fluency. Because fluency is not built by how much you understand. It's built by how much you express. Right now, your brain is trained to receive, but not to respond, and that's the gap you feel every time you try to speak. So the shift is simple, but powerful. Don't just watch English. Don't just listen. Don't just read. Start speaking, out loud, every day. Repeat what you hear, answer questions, talk to yourself, even if it feels strange, even if no one is around. Because the moment you start releasing English, your brain begins to change, your words come faster. Your confidence grows, your voice becomes stronger, and slowly, what you understand becomes what you can actually say. Because English was never meant to stay in your head. It was meant to come out. And the moment you start releasing it, that's when real fluency begins. You keep telling yourself, let me learn a little more. Let me practice a bit more. Let me feel confident first. Then I will speak. It sounds reasonable. It feels safe. But this is the trap that's been holding you back the whole time, because confidence doesn't come before speaking. It comes because of speaking. Right now, you're waiting to feel ready. But readiness is not a feeling. It's an action. And the longer you wait, the more your fear grows, the more pressure builds, the harder it becomes to start. You start thinking, I'm still not good enough. I need more time. I'm not ready yet. But the truth is, you will never feel fully ready. There will always be something you don't know. There will always be a better word, a better sentence, a better way to say it. If you wait for perfect confidence, you will wait forever. Look at every fluent speaker you admire. They didn't start confident. They started unsure. They made mistakes. They felt awkward. They struggled to find words, but they spoke anyway. And every time they spoke, something changed. Their brain adapted. Their speed improved. Their fear became smaller. That's how confidence is built. Not by thinking, not by preparing, but by doing. Right now, your brain is stuck in preparation mode, always getting ready, never actually moving. And that's why you feel stuck. Because growth doesn't happen in preparation. It happens in action. So the shift is simple, but powerful. Stop asking yourself, am I ready? Start telling yourself, I will speak anyway. Even if your voice shakes, even if your sentence is broken, even if you feel uncomfortable. Because that discomfort is the beginning of confidence. Every time you speak, you prove to your brain that you can. Every time you take action, your fear loses power, and slowly, what once felt difficult starts to feel normal. Confidence is not something you wait for. It's something you build, one sentence at a time. So stop waiting, start speaking. Because the moment you act without confidence is the moment confidence begins to grow. The moment you try to speak, everything starts happening at the same time. You think about the words, you check the grammar, you worry about pronunciation, you try to choose the best sentence. You think about how the other person will react, and while all of this is happening, you're still trying to speak. Your brain is carrying too much at once, and when it becomes too much, it slows down, then it freezes, then nothing comes out. This is why you feel blocked, not because you don't know English, but because your mind is overloaded. It's trying to do 5 different jobs at the same time, and speaking doesn't work like that. Real speaking is simple. It's one thought, one sentence, one moment. Fluent speakers are not doing everything at once. They're not checking every rule. They're not thinking about every mistake. They're focused on one thing or expressing the idea. That's why they sound smooth. That's why their words come faster, because their mind is not crowded. But your mind is full of rules, full of doubts, full of pressure. And all of that noise is blocking your voice. Think about it like this. If you try to carry too many things in your hands, you drop everything. The same thing is happening in your mind. You're trying to control everything at once, and that's why you lose everything in that moment. So the solution is not to try harder. It's to simplify. Stop thinking about everything. Focus on one thing only. Your message. Not perfect grammar, not perfect pronunciation, just your idea. Say it in the simplest way you can, even if it's short. Even if it's not perfect. Because when your mind becomes simple, your speech becomes clear. At first, it will feel strange. You'll feel like you're saying less, like your English is too basic. But this is the right path. Because fluency is not built by doing more. It's built by doing less. More clearly. So the next time you speak, don't try to control everything. Let go. Say one sentence, then the next, step by step. And you'll notice something powerful. Your mind becomes lighter. Your words come easier. And slowly, the pressure disappears because your brain is no longer overloaded. It's finally free to speak. From the very beginning, you were taught English the same way you were taught any school subject. You sat down, you opened a book, you learned rules, you memorized words, you solved exercises. You focused on getting the right answers, and for that system, you did well. You understood grammar, you recognized sentence structures, you passed tests, you knew what was correct and what was wrong. But here's the problem. Real life is not a test. No one is standing in front of you waiting for the perfect answer. No one is giving you time to think, correct, and rewrite your sentence. Real conversation is alive. It moves fast. It's unpredictable. It doesn't follow rules step by step. And this is where everything breaks. Because your brain was trained to treat English like something to solve, not something to use. So when you try to speak, your mind goes back to that old system. It searches for rules. It tries to remember structures. It wants to be correct. Yeah, it wants to build the right sentence. But speaking doesn't come from rules. It comes from habit. It comes from repetition. It comes from using the language again and again until it becomes natural. Think about your own language. You don't stop and think about grammar before you speak. You don't build sentences slowly in your head. You just speak, because your brain is trained to respond, not to analyze. That's what a living skill looks like. It flows. It reacts. It moves without effort. But English, for you, still feels like something outside of you. Something you have to work on. Something you have to get right. And that's why it doesn't feel natural. Because it's not part of your system yet. It's still something you're trying to control. When you learn a subject, you focus on understanding. When you learn a skill, you focus on doing. And this is the shift you need to make. Right now, you understand English, but you don't use it enough to make it automatic. That's why you pause. That's why you think. That's why you feel pressure when speaking. Because your brain is still in learning mode, not in using mode. Fluent speakers didn't become fluent because they knew more rules. They became fluent because they used the language more. They repeated simple sentences. They spoke daily. They made mistakes. They adjusted naturally. They didn't treat English like something to study forever. They treated it like something to live with, something to use in real situations, something to express themselves with, even when it wasn't perfect. And over time, that use became natural. That repetition became automatic. That effort became ease. So the real question is not, how much do you know? The real question is, how much do you use? Because knowledge alone will never give you fluency. Only usage will. So stop treating English like a subject you need to master. Start treating it like a skill you need to practice. Speak more. Repeat more. Use simple English in your daily life. Think in it. Respond in it, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Because that discomfort is the sign that your brain is changing. And slowly, something powerful begins to happen. You stop thinking about English, and you start living in it. Your sentences become faster. Your reactions become natural. Your confidence grows without forcing it. And one day, you will speak, without even realizing how it became so easy. Not because you learned more rules, but because you finally trained your brain to use English like a real, living skill. There is a belief inside you, very quiet, but very powerful, a belief that says, simple English is not enough. So when you try to speak, you don't go for the easy sentence. You don't say what comes naturally. Instead, you search for something better, something more advanced, something that sounds impressive. You try to use bigger words, longer sentences, more complex ideas, and in that moment, everything slows down. Your brain starts working harder. You pause, you hesitate, you lose your flow, not because you don't know English, but because you're trying to sound better than you need to be. This is where many learners get stuck. They think fluency means complexity. They think good English means long sentences. They think they need to sound like a native speaker from the very beginning. But that belief is wrong. Fluency is not about how complex your English is. It's about how easily it comes out. It's about speed, clarity, flow, and simple English gives you all of that. Think about real conversations. Most people don't speak in long, perfect sentences. They speak in short ideas, simple words, direct expressions. They don't stop to impress. They speak to connect. But you're trying to impress before you can even express, and that pressure is blocking you. Because every time you try to upgrade your sentence, you create delay. Every time you search for a better word, you lose time. Every time you try to sound advanced, you lose your natural rhythm. And slowly, speaking becomes heavy, difficult, stressful. You start feeling like English is hard, but it's not. You just made it hard because you stopped trusting the simple version of your voice. You stopped trusting that basic English is enough. But here's the truth. Simple English is powerful. It's fast. It's clear. It works in every situation. You don't need complicated words to communicate. You need clear ideas, and simple language delivers that better than anything else. Look at fluent speakers. They don't always use advanced vocabulary. They use what's easy, what's natural, what comes quickly, and that's why they sound confident, because they're not forcing their speech. They're allowing it. But you're holding your words back. You're trying to upgrade them before you even say them. And that's why your speech feels blocked, because you're not speaking from flow. You're speaking from pressure. You're trying to perform instead of communicate. And performance always creates tension. Communication creates ease. So the real shift you need is this. Stop trying to sound advanced. Start allowing yourself to sound simple. Say the first sentence that comes to your mind. Not the best one, not the perfect one, just the real one. Even if it feels too basic. Even if you think it's not impressive. Because what feels too simple to you is actually natural in real conversation. At first, your ego might resist. You might feel like, this is too easy. This doesn't sound good enough. But that's just your old habit talking, the habit of trying to be perfect, trying to be impressive, trying to prove something. But you don't need to prove anything, you just need to speak. And simple English will help you do that. Because when you simplify your language, you remove pressure from your mind. Your brain doesn't have to search too much. It doesn't have to build complex structures. It can move faster. And when your brain moves faster, your speech becomes smoother. Your confidence grows. Your hesitation disappears. This is how fluency is built. Not by adding more, but by removing what's unnecessary. By trusting what you already know. By using what you already have. Again and again. Until it becomes automatic. Until it becomes natural. Until you stop thinking about it completely. So the next time you speak, don't try to impress. Don't try to sound advanced. Don't try to make it perfect. Just say it. And as simply, clearly, quickly. Because the goal is not to sound smart. The goal is to be understood. And the more you trust simple English, the more your voice will open. The more your words will flow. The more natural you will sound. And one day, you will realize something surprising. The English you were trying to avoid, the simple one, was the one that was going to make you fluent all along. Because fluency doesn't come from complexity. It comes from ease. And ease begins the moment you trust simple English. There is something happening inside your mind every time you try to speak. It's not loud, but it's constant. A voice that watches you. A voice that checks you. A voice that quietly says, is this right? Does this sound good? What if this is wrong? And in that moment, you're no longer focused on speaking. You are focused on yourself, on how you sound, on how you look, on how others might see you. This is self-judgment, and it is one of the biggest reasons your English feels stuck, because speaking requires freedom. But judgment creates pressure, and pressure blocks your natural flow. Think about what happens when you try to speak. You start a sentence, and immediately, you begin to monitor it. You check your grammar. You listen to your pronunciation. You question your word choice. And while you're doing all of this, your sentence loses its natural rhythm. It breaks. It slows down. Sometimes it stops completely. Not because you don't know what to say, but because you're interrupting yourself. Again and again. This is the hidden habit most people never notice. They think the problem is vocabulary, or grammar, or confidence. But the real problem is that they don't allow themselves to speak freely. They're too busy watching themselves speak. Imagine trying to walk while thinking about every step, where to place your foot, how to balance your body, how to move correctly. You would struggle. You would feel awkward. You might even stop, because walking is natural only when you don't think about it. Speaking works the same way. The more you observe it, the more unnatural it becomes. And right now, you're over-observing everything. You're trying to control every detail, and that control is exactly what's blocking you. Because fluency is not controlled, it's released. Fluent speakers don't monitor every word. They don't stop themselves mid-sentence to fix everything. They allow their thoughts to come out, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not clean. They trust the flow. But you don't trust your flow yet, so you try to control it. And control creates tension. You start thinking, I should say it like this. No, maybe this word is better. Wait, is this correct? And in that moment, you disconnect from your message. You forget what you wanted to say. You lose your natural rhythm, and speaking becomes hard. This is why sometimes you know exactly what you want to say, but you still can't say it, because your mind is not empty. It's full of judgment, full of correction, full of pressure. And that pressure is stopping your voice. There's another layer to this, a deeper one. You're not just judging your English, you're judging yourself. You're connecting your mistakes into your identity. You think, if I speak wrong, I look stupid. If I make mistakes, people will judge me. If I don't sound good, I'm not good enough. So now, speaking is no longer just about communication. It becomes emotional, personal, heavy. And that's why you hesitate, because it feels like you're risking something. But here's the truth. You're not your mistakes. Your English is not your identity. A broken sentence does not mean you're not smart. A wrong word does not define your ability. It just means you're learning. And learning is never perfect. But when you judge yourself too much, you stop allowing yourself to learn. You create fear, you create pressure, you create hesitation, and all of that blocks your growth. So the shift you need to make is this. Stop watching yourself. Start expressing yourself. When you speak, don't focus on how you sound. Focus on what you want to say. Don't listen to every mistake. Listen to your message. Don't try to fix everything in the moment. Let it come out first. Fix later. Because correction has its place, but not during expression. When you are speaking, your only job is to release, not to judge, not to analyze, not to control, just to express. At first, this will feel uncomfortable. You might feel like you're making too many mistakes, like your English is messy, like it's not good enough. But this is part of the process, because what feels messy is actually progress. You're finally allowing your brain to move. You're finally giving your voice space. And over time, something beautiful begins to happen. Your sentences become smoother. Your pauses become shorter. Your confidence grows, not because you became perfect, but because you stopped stopping yourself. This is the real secret. Fluency is not about saying everything right. It's about not stopping yourself every second. The less you interrupt your flow, the stronger your flow becomes. The less you judge your words, the easier they come out. And slowly, your mind becomes quieter. That voice that used to check everything starts to fade, and in its place, your natural voice begins to rise, clear, simple, real. So the next time you speak, don't try to sound perfect. Don't try to sound impressive. Don't try to prove anything. Just speak. Let your words come out, even if they're simple, even if they're broken, even if they're not perfect. Because fluency is not built by judging yourself. It's built by allowing yourself. And the moment you stop watching yourself speak is the moment you finally start speaking freely. That is where your real voice lives. And that is where true fluency begins. This is the truth most people don't want to hear, because it sounds simple, almost too simple, but it explains everything. You don't speak enough, not sometimes, not occasionally, enough. You understand English, you recognize words, you follow conversations, you feel like you are improving. But when it comes to speaking, your practice is very low, and that gap between what you know and what you use is the reason you feel stuck. Because language is not built by knowledge, it is built by usage. Right now, your English lives mostly in your mind. You collect words, you understand sentences, you absorb information, but you rarely push it out. And that's the problem, because your brain learns differently when you speak. When you speak, your brain is forced to react, to choose words, to form sentences, to express ideas in real time. This pressure is what builds fluency. Without it, your English stays passive, comfortable, safe, but weak. Think about it like this. If you watch people play football every day, you will understand the game. You will know the rules. You will recognize strategies. But if you never play, your body will not respond when you step on the field. You will feel slow, uncoordinated, lost. because understanding is not the same as ability. Speaking English works the same way. You can watch, you can listen, you can study, but if you don't speak, your brain will never build the speed you need, and speed is everything. Fluency is not just about knowing what to say, it's about saying it quickly, naturally, without long pauses, and that speed only comes from repetition, from speaking again and again until your brain stops searching and starts responding. But here's what most people do. They speak a little, then stop. They try once, then go back to watching videos. They wait for the perfect moment. They wait for confidence. They wait for improvement. But improvement comes from speaking, not from waiting. Every time you avoid speaking, you stay in the same place. Every time you choose silence, you delay your progress. And slowly, this becomes your habit. You become someone who understands English, but doesn't use it. Someone who knows, but doesn't express. And the longer this continues, the harder it feels to break. Because your brain adapts to what you do most. If you mostly listen, your brain becomes good at listening. If you mostly read, your brain becomes good at reading. But if you don't speak, your brain never develops that ability. It stays weak in that area. It hesitates, it freezes, it struggles to respond. Not because you're not capable, but because you haven't trained it enough. This is why some people with basic English can speak better than those with advanced knowledge, because they practice speaking more, they repeat simple sentences, they use what they know, they don't wait, they act, and through that action, their brain becomes faster, stronger, more flexible. That's how fluency is built, not by learning more, but by using more. And this is where you need to be honest with yourself. Ask yourself, how much do I actually speak every day? Not in your head, not silently, out loud. Real speaking, real expression. If the answer is not much, then that is your answer. That is the reason you feel stuck, and the solution is not complicated, but it requires consistency. You need to speak more every day, not perfectly, not impressively, just regularly. Speak when you're alone. Speak when you're thinking. Speak after watching something. Repeat sentences. Answer questions out loud. Create small conversations. Train your brain to respond. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. You might feel slow. You might struggle to find words. You might make mistakes. But that's exactly what should happen. Because that struggle is your brain learning. That difficulty is your brain adapting. And every time you push through it, you become better. Your speed increases. Your hesitation decreases. Your confidence grows. Not because you learned more words, but because you used them more. This is the shift, from passive to active, from understanding to expressing, from knowing to doing. And once you make this shift, everything changes. Your English starts to feel alive. Your sentences come faster. Your mind becomes more flexible. You stop freezing. You start responding. And slowly, you become someone who speaks, not someone who just understands. Because in the end, fluency is not about how much English you know. It's about how much English you use. And the hidden truth is this. You already know more than enough. You just haven't spoken enough. So stop waiting. Stop overthinking. Stop preparing. Start speaking. Even if it's simple, even if it's messy, even if it's not perfect. Because every sentence you speak is one step closer to fluency, and every moment you stay silent is one step away from it. So choose your direction. Use your voice, again and again, until speaking becomes natural, until responding becomes easy, until English is no longer something you think about, but something you do. Because that is the moment you finally break through, not by learning more, but by finally speaking enough. There comes a moment in your journey, a quiet but powerful moment, where everything begins to change, not because you learned a new word, not because you understood a new grammar rule, but because you made one simple decision to stop thinking and start expressing. This is the turning point, the point where you stop treating English like something you have to solve and start using it like something you already have. Up until now, your focus has been on thinking about the right words, thinking about the correct structure, thinking about how your sentence sounds, thinking about what others will think. Your mind has been busy, constantly working, constantly analysing. And because of that, your speech has been slow, heavy, blocked. Because thinking creates delay, and speaking needs speed. This is the truth most people never realize. You cannot think your way into fluency. You have to express your way into it. Right now, your brain is trained to pause before speaking, to check before releasing, to fix before saying. But this habit is exactly what's stopping your progress. Because every time you stop to think, you break your flow. Every time you analyze, you create hesitation. Every time you try to be correct, you delay your voice. And over time, this becomes your pattern. You become someone who thinks a lot, but says very little. Someone who knows what to say, but cannot say it in the moment. Someone who is always almost ready, but never actually speaking freely. And that's why you feel stuck. Because your energy is going in the wrong direction. You're investing in thinking instead of expressing. But fluency doesn't grow in your thoughts. It grows in your voice. It grows in your action. It grows in your willingness to speak, even when you are not ready. So the shift begins here. Instead of asking yourself, "Is this correct?" Start asking yourself, "Can I say this right now?" Instead of building the perfect sentence, release the simple one. Instead of waiting, respond. This might feel uncomfortable at first, because your brain is not used to it. It will try to stop you. It will say, "Wait, think more, fix it first, say it better." But this is the old habit, the habit that kept you stuck, and now you are breaking it. So when that voice appears, don't listen to it. Speak anyway, even if your sentence is incomplete, even if it's not perfect, even if you feel unsure, because this is how you train your brain. You teach it that speaking comes first, and correction comes later. You teach it that expression is more important than perfection. You teach it to move instead of freeze. At the beginning, your speech may feel messy, your sentences may be simple, your words may not always be correct. And that's okay, because what matters is not how perfect your English is, but how freely it comes out. Fluency is not clean in the beginning. It is rough, unpolished, but alive. And that's what you need. You need movement. You need flow. You need your voice to come out without resistance. Because once that flow begins, everything else improves naturally. Your grammar gets better, your vocabulary expands, your pronunciation improves, not because you studied more, but because you used more. This is the power of expression. It activates your brain in a completely different way. When you express, your brain starts connecting ideas faster. It learns to respond in real time. It stops searching and starts producing. And over time, this production becomes automatic. You no longer have to think about every word. You no longer have to build every sentence. It just comes, naturally, effortlessly. But it all begins with one decision: to stop thinking so much. Now. This does not mean you never think. It means you change when you think. There is a time for learning, a time for understanding, a time for correcting. But when you're speaking, that is not the time. When you are speaking, your only job is to express. Think later, fix later, improve later. But in the moment, just speak. This is what fluent speakers do. They don't stop mid-sentence to fix everything. They keep going. They allow their ideas to flow. They trust their brain. And because of that, they sound natural. They sound confident. Not because they are perfect, but because they are free. And that freedom is what you're building now. Every time you choose expression over thinking, you take one step forward. Every time you speak without waiting, you strengthen your flow. Every time you allow imperfection, you remove fear. And slowly, your brain begins to change. It becomes faster, more flexible, more responsive. Speaking becomes easier, more natural, more automatic. You stop feeling stuck, you stop freezing, you stop overthinking, and instead, you start communicating. This is the real goal. Not perfect English, but real communication. Being able to say what you feel, what you think, what you want, in the moment, without fear, without delay, without pressure. That is fluency, and it is built through expression, not thinking. So from now on, make this your rule. When it's time to speak, don't think too much. Say it. Say something. Anything. Keep the conversation moving. Keep your voice active, even if it's simple, even if it's not perfect. Because the more you express, the less you will need to think. And one day, you will notice something powerful. You are speaking without trying, without building, without stopping. Your words are flowing. Your mind is quiet. Your confidence is natural. And in that moment, you will realize this was the turning point, the moment you stopped thinking and finally started expressing. That's when everything changed. That's when your English became real. And that's when fluency truly began. There is a moment, very small, very quiet, that decides everything. A moment before you speak. A moment where your mind asks, "Am I ready?" And almost every time, the answer feels like no. You don't feel confident. You don't feel sure. You don't feel prepared. So you wait. You tell yourself, "Let me learn a little more. Let me practice more. Let me feel comfortable first." And in that waiting, nothing changes. This is where most people stay stuck. Not because they don't have enough knowledge, but because they are waiting for a feeling that never comes. Because readiness is not a feeling, it's a decision. And the truth is, you will never feel fully ready to speak English. There will always be something missing. A better word, a stronger sentence, a more natural way to say it. So if you keep waiting for the perfect moment, you will keep delaying your growth. Look at your journey honestly. How many times have you said, "I'll start speaking soon"? How many times have you postponed it? Just one more day, just one more week. And how much has really changed in that time? Very little. Because improvement doesn't come from thinking about speaking. It comes from actually speaking. This is the part most people avoid, because it feels uncomfortable. When you speak before you feel ready, you feel exposed. Your mistakes are visible. Your sentences are not perfect. Your mind feels slow, and that discomfort makes you want to stop. But that discomfort is exactly where growth begins. Every time you speak without feeling ready, you're training your brain in a new way. You're telling it, move anyway, respond anyway, express anyway. And your brain listens. It adapts. It starts becoming faster, stronger, more flexible. But if you wait, your brain never gets that training. It stays in safe mode, in preparation mode, in thinking mode, always getting ready, never actually doing. And over time, this becomes your identity. You become someone who says, "I understand English, but I can't speak." But that's not your limit, that's your habit. A habit of waiting, a habit of delaying action, a habit of needing to feel ready first. And now, you're breaking that habit. You're choosing something different. You're choosing action over comfort, because growth never happens in comfort. It happens in movement. It happens when you take action, before your mind feels safe. Think about the first time you tried anything new. Riding a bike, driving a car, speaking in front of people. You were not ready. You felt nervous, uncertain, maybe even scared. But you did it anyway. And through that action, you improved. You learned. You became better. Not because you felt ready, but because you started before you were ready. Speaking English works the same way. The first time you speak, it will feel difficult. The words will not come easily. Your sentences will break. You will pause, you will hesitate, and that's okay. Because that's how it starts. That's how your brain learns. That's how your system builds strength. Every time you speak without feeling ready, you are building courage. Every time you push through that hesitation, you're building confidence. Not fake confidence. Real confidence. The kind that comes from experience. The kind that comes from action. The kind that stays with you. Because it's not based on feeling. It's based on proof. Proof that you can speak. Proof that you can respond. Proof that you can move forward even when it's not perfect. And slowly, something begins to change. The fear becomes smaller. The hesitation becomes shorter. The words begin to come faster. Not because you suddenly became perfect, but because you stopped waiting. You started moving. This is the secret. Fluent speakers are not the ones who felt ready. They are the ones who spoke before they were ready. Again and again. Until speaking became normal. Until the fear lost its power. Until their brain adapted. And now, this is your path. From this moment, stop asking yourself, "Am I ready?" Start telling yourself, "I will speak anyway." Even if your voice shakes, even if your sentence is simple, even if your mind feels slow. Because that moment, that uncomfortable moment before you speak, is where your growth lives. That is where your brain changes. That is where your confidence is built. And the more you step into that moment, the easier it becomes. At first, it will feel heavy. You will feel resistance. Your mind will try to stop you. But if you keep going, if you keep speaking anyway, something powerful happens. Your brain stops fighting. It starts cooperating. It begins to trust you. It begins to respond faster. And what once felt impossible starts to feel normal. This is how transformation happens. Not in one big moment, but in many small moments, where you choose action over fear, where you choose expression over silence, where you choose growth over comfort. So don't wait. Don't delay. Don't tell yourself you need more time. You don't. You need more action, more speaking, more real use, because you already know enough. You already have the words. You already understand more than you think. Now, you just need to use it. So speak. Speak when you're unsure. Speak when you feel nervous. Speak when you think you're not ready. Because that is the moment that will change everything. That is where your real growth begins. And one day, you will look back at this version of yourself, the one who was waiting, the one who was unsure, the one who thought they weren't ready, and you will realize something powerful. You were always ready. You just needed to start. And the moment you did, everything began to change. There is a misunderstanding that quietly controls the way you speak English, and until you see it clearly, it will keep slowing you down no matter how much you learn. You believe that better English means more complex English. You believe that sounding fluent means using longer sentences, advanced vocabulary, and perfectly structured ideas. So every time you try to speak, you aim higher than your current ability. You don't allow yourself to use what is easy. You push yourself to sound better, smarter, more impressive, and in that effort, something very important breaks: your natural flow. Because fluency is not built on complexity. It is built on speed, clarity, and ease. It is built on how quickly your thoughts turn into words, how smoothly your ideas come out, and how naturally you can respond in real time. And the truth is, complex English slows all of that down. It forces your brain to search more, to think longer, to build more carefully. And every extra second of thinking creates hesitation. Every moment of hesitation breaks your rhythm. And once your rhythm is broken, your confidence starts to fall. This is why you often feel like you know English but cannot use it. Not because you lack knowledge, but because you are trying to use English in a way that your brain cannot handle yet. You're asking for advanced output from a system that has not been trained for speed. You're trying to run before you can walk smoothly. And this creates pressure. It creates tension. It makes speaking feel heavy instead of natural. Now think about how people actually speak in real life. Most conversations are not filled with long, perfect sentences. People use short phrases, simple words, direct ideas. They don't stop to search for the best possible expression. They say what comes first, and they keep the conversation moving. Their goal is not to impress. Their goal is to communicate. And because of that, their speech feels easy. It flows. It adapts. It responds. This is the part you need to understand deeply. Fluency is not about how advanced your English sounds. It is about how easily it comes out of you. And simple English allows that ease. It reduces the load on your brain. It removes unnecessary pressure. It gives your mind space to move quickly. And when your mind moves quickly, your speech becomes natural. Right now, you're slowing yourself down by trying to upgrade every sentence before you speak it. You think of an idea, and instead of saying it in a simple way, you try to improve it. You look for better words. You try to add structure. You adjust the grammar. And in that process, your original thought loses its energy. It becomes delayed. Sometimes it disappears completely. This is why you feel stuck in conversations. Not because you don't know what to say, but because you're trying to say it in a way that is too complex for the moment. There is a powerful shift that needs to happen here. You need to give yourself permission to be simple, not temporarily, but as a core strategy. You need to trust that simple English is not a weakness. It is the foundation of fluency. It is the fastest way to build confidence. It is the most reliable way to create flow. Because when you speak simply, you remove resistance. Your brain does not need to search deeply. It uses what is already available, it responds quickly, and that quick response builds momentum. Momentum is everything in speaking. Once you start speaking and your words begin to come out, even if they are simple, your brain continues moving. It stays active. It stays engaged. And the more it moves, the easier it becomes to continue. But when you stop to think too much, you break that momentum. You create a gap, and that gap is where doubt enters. That is where hesitation grows. That is where your confidence drops. Simple English protects your momentum. It keeps you moving forward. It allows you to stay in the conversation instead of falling behind. And over time, that consistent movement trains your brain to respond faster. Your reactions become quicker. Your sentences become smoother. Not because you forced complexity, but because you allowed simplicity. There is also something important you need to understand about speed. Many people think fluency means speaking fast in a rushed way. That is not what we mean here. Speed is not about talking quickly without control. It is about reducing the delay between your thought and your speech. It is about shortening the time your brain needs to respond, and simple English does exactly that. It removes extra steps. It creates direct pathways between what you think and what you say. When your sentences are simple, your brain does not need to build them from scratch. It starts recognizing patterns, it begins to reuse structures, it creates automatic responses, and this is how fluency is formed. Not by constantly creating new complex sentences, but by repeating simple ones until they become natural, until they no longer require effort, until they come out without thinking. This is why repetition is powerful. When you use simple English again and again, your brain strengthens those pathways. It becomes faster at accessing them. And over time, those simple structures expand naturally. You start adding variation without forcing it. You begin to improve without pressure. Your language grows, but your flow remains intact. Now compare this to what happens when you always try to speak in a complex way. Your brain never gets the chance to build speed. It stays in a constant state of searching. Every sentence feels new. Every response feels heavy. And because of that, you never develop consistency. Your speaking becomes unpredictable. Sometimes you say something well, but most of the time you struggle, and this inconsistency keeps your confidence low. So the real key is not to aim higher. It is to go deeper into what is simple, to master the basics so completely that they become automatic, to use them so often that your brain no longer needs to think about them. This is where true confidence comes from, not from knowing advanced words, but from being able to use simple ones without hesitation. There is also an emotional shift that happens when you simplify your English. You stop trying to perform. You stop trying to impress. You stop comparing yourself to others. And when that pressure disappears, your mind becomes calmer. Your speech becomes more natural. You begin to enjoy the process instead of fearing it. And this enjoyment is important because it keeps you consistent. It keeps you practicing. It keeps you improving without forcing yourself. At first, your ego might resist this idea. You might feel like simple English is not enough. You might feel like you are not improving if you're not using advanced words. But this is just a misunderstanding. Growth is not always visible in complexity. Sometimes it is visible in ease, in how smoothly you can speak, in how quickly you can respond, in how comfortable you feel expressing your thoughts. So instead of asking yourself, how can I sound better? Start asking, how can I say this more simply? Instead of trying to impress, try to connect. Instead of building long sentences, break them into smaller ones. Instead of searching for perfect words, use the first clear word that comes to your mind. These small changes will transform your speaking more than any new vocabulary list ever will. Over time, something very powerful begins to happen. Your brain adapts to this new way of speaking. It becomes faster, more flexible, more responsive. Your hesitation decreases. Your confidence grows naturally. And then, without even trying, your English begins to expand. You start using better words, more natural structures, and more variation. But this growth comes from a place of strength, not pressure. And this is the real goal. Not to force advanced English, but to build a strong, natural base that allows your language to grow freely. Because when your foundation is simple and fast, everything else becomes easier. Your brain is no longer fighting, it is cooperating. It is supporting your speech instead of slowing it down. So from this moment, change your approach. Stop chasing complexity. Stop trying to sound perfect. Stop delaying your speech for the sake of improvement. Instead, focus on simplicity. Focus on speed. Focus on flow. Use what you already know. use it often, use it freely, and trust that this is enough. Because simple and fast English is not just a method. It is the real key to fluency. It is what allows your voice to come out without resistance. It is what turns your knowledge into action. It is what transforms your thinking into speaking. And the moment you fully accept this, everything changes. Your English becomes lighter. Your speech becomes smoother. Your confidence becomes real. And for the first time, you stop feeling stuck. You stop feeling behind. You stop feeling like you are trying too hard. You simply speak. And that is where fluency truly begins. There is one final piece that brings everything together. One principle that most people ignore, but it is the reason some learners become fluent, while others stay stuck for years, and that is this: repetition. Not random repetition, not repeating words from a list, not memorizing sentences from a book, but repeating real-life situations again and again until your brain stops thinking and starts responding naturally. Because at the end of the day, fluency is not about knowing English. It is about responding in real time. It is about being able to hear something and answer without long pauses, without overthinking, without building the sentence from zero every time. And that ability comes from repetition. Think about your daily life. There are certain situations that happen again and again. Introducing yourself, asking for something, answering simple questions, starting a conversation, ending a conversation, reacting to common situations. These moments repeat in real life. But what most learners do is, they never practice these situations directly. They study English in a general way. They learn random vocabulary, they watch content, they read, but they don't train their brain for specific repeated situations. And because of that, every time they face a real conversation, it feels new, unfamiliar, uncertain. Their brain has to build everything from scratch, and that takes time, that creates hesitation, that breaks their flow. But fluent speakers don't build everything from scratch. They rely on patterns, on repeated experiences, on sentences they've used before, on responses their brain already knows, and this is why they can speak so quickly. Because their brain is not searching. It is recognizing. It is responding based on memory, based on repetition, and this is exactly what you need to build. You need to train your brain, not just to know English, but to recognize situations and respond automatically. And the only way to do that is through repetition in real-life contexts. Let's understand this deeply. When you repeat a situation, your brain starts to create connections. The first time you try, it feels difficult. You pause, you think, you struggle to find words. The second time, it's slightly easier. You remember a few words, you respond a bit faster. The third time is your brain starts to recognize the pattern. It begins to expect the situation. It prepares itself. And then, after repeating it enough times, something powerful happens. You no longer think, you respond. Automatically, naturally, without effort. This is what we call rewiring. Your brain is changing. It is building faster pathways. It is reducing the need to think. It is creating automatic responses. And that is fluency. Not perfect grammar, not advanced vocabulary, but automatic response. The ability to speak without stopping, without building every sentence, without feeling stuck. And this is only possible through repetition. But here is where most people go wrong. They repeat things in isolation. They memorize sentences without context. They repeat after videos without understanding the situation. And this creates weak learning, because your brain does not connect it to real life. It remains separate, temporary, easy to forget. But when you repeat real-life situations, your brain connects everything together. The words, the meaning, the emotion, the context, and this creates strong learning. Learning that stays, learning that becomes part of you. So instead of practicing random English, start practicing real situations. Imagine you are meeting someone for the first time. What would you say? Repeat it, again and again, until it feels natural. Imagine someone asks you a simple question. How would you answer? Repeat it, out loud, until your response becomes automatic. Imagine you're ordering something, or asking for help, or explaining something simple. Practice those situations, not once, not twice, but many times, until your brain stops thinking about it and starts responding naturally. At first, it may feel repetitive, it may feel boring. You might think, I already know this. But knowing is not enough. You need to train your brain to use it without thinking. And that only happens through repetition. Think about how children learn language. They don't study rules. They don't memorize grammar. They repeat again and again the same words, the same phrases, the same situations. And through that repetition, their brain becomes fast, flexible, natural. That's why they can speak without thinking. That's why their language flows, because it has been repeated so many times. It became automatic. You need to do the same. Not like a child in age, but like a child in method. Repeat real situations, use simple language, focus on speaking, not perfection. And over time, you will notice something changing. The situations you practiced start to feel easy. Your responses come faster. Your hesitation disappears. Your confidence grows. And then something even more powerful happens. Your brain starts using those patterns in new situations. You begin to adapt, to adjust, to create new sentences based on what you've already repeated. This is how fluency expands, from repetition to flexibility, from practice to real communication. And this is why repetition is not boring. It is powerful. It is the foundation. It is the process that turns knowledge into ability. So from now on, change the way you practice. Don't just learn English. Train for real life. Pick common situations. Repeat them daily. Speak out loud. Feel the words. Use your voice again and again, until your brain no longer needs to search, until your response becomes natural, until speaking feels easy, because that is the goal, not to think about English, but to live in it, to respond without effort, to speak without fear, and repetition is the path that takes you there. It rewires your brain, it builds your speed, it strengthens your confidence, and it turns your English into something real, something natural, something that flows. So don't underestimate it, don't avoid it, embrace it. Repeat your way to fluency. Because the more you repeat real-life situations, the closer you get to a moment where you speak without thinking at all. And in that moment, you will realize you're no longer learning English. You're using it naturally, effortlessly, fluently. One day, you will open your mouth and the words will come out. Not perfectly, not carefully, but naturally. Without that heavy pause, without that pressure in your chest, without that voice in your head asking, "Is this right?" You will speak, and it will feel simple, calm, effortless. And in that moment, you will realize something deep. You were never bad at English. You were just holding yourself back, thinking too much, waiting too long, trying too hard to be perfect. But the moment you let go, the moment you started speaking, everything began to change. And now, that version of you is not far. It's not years away. It's built. One sentence at a time. Every time you speak, even when it feels uncomfortable, you are moving closer to that version. A version of you that doesn't freeze, doesn't hesitate, doesn't stay silent, but expresses clearly, confidently, freely. So don't stop now. Don't go back to overthinking. Don't go back to waiting. Because your voice is already there. It just needs to be used. And the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Until one day, you won't even think about speaking English. You'll just do it. And it will feel like it was always yours. If you're ready to stop overthinking and finally start speaking, then this is your moment. Don't just watch this and move on. Use it. Today, right now. Speak one sentence out loud, then another and another. Train your brain to act, not wait. And if you're serious about changing your English, stay with me. Because this is not about learning more. It's about finally unlocking what you already know. Subscribe now and start your journey from thinking to speaking.